older people often live needing lots of help and support from health services, from each other, from social care. That's not a good situation. In the United Kingdom, that's even worse, because what we've got is a population that's getting older and older and older. Our life expectancy is getting really good. Year on year, we're getting older and older, but we get sicker earlier. So, in the UK, I can only live to about the age of 63 before I start to get ill. So we've got a much bigger burden here. This sickness burden is big, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, right now, it's actually healthier to be in the Ukraine than it is in the United Kingdom. But, next slide please. That's changing, and it's changing rapidly. We've got some real problems in Ukraine, as you know. I don't need to re-emphasise that. You know and I know some of the problems. One of the problems from a demographic point of view is the loss of people through the difference between the birth rate and the death rate, which means that you've got a shrinking population. Emigration out of Ukraine, lots of people are going out as well. So there's a steady trend of depopulation. But also, this issue about healthy lifestyles is also getting worse. So the things that are killing people and making people sick in the United Kingdom, the same things are making people sick and killing them in Ukraine. And I just want to read out some words from this lady here, Irina, who's a demographer, epidemiologist and demographer in Ukraine. So she says, most Ukrainians do not live an altogether healthy lifestyle. We have unprecedented mortality rates, and these are caused by excessive drinking and other bad habits. This, in particular, applies to men. The share of alcohol-related deaths is especially high in this category, just like that of premature deaths before 65 in the rest of the population. The only real opportunity now is to take measures to reduce the incidence of premature deaths, especially among men. I disagree. I think it's not about premature death, it's about premature illness. We've got to keep people in Ukraine healthy, full stop. And that means dealing with some really pressing issues. We heard some brilliant speeches this morning from some great philanthropic organisations that are challenging the tobacco industry, that are tackling alcohol issues, dealing with HIV. All of these things are really important. And if you ask any Ukrainian in any poll, individually we all say health is important to us. There have been lots of polls that have done that, lots of pieces of research, but it doesn't translate into action yet. There's still too many Ukrainians that don't seem to be able to connect these general health issues with their lives. It's not just Ukraine, that's the same in UK, across Europe, most countries. Next slide. So, what determines our health? At the core, what determines our health are those factors within us, our genetic factors, our behavioural factors, the choices we make with our lifestyle. But they are shaped by the environment that we live in. So whether we get access to good education, whether we have good transport systems, whether we're encouraged to exercise, if we do want to take physical activity, whether there are really good facilities for us to go and use and feel good about using. All of these things affect us, whether we've got good health services around us. There's all these different parts to our lives that affect, ultimately, our health. But cutting through all of these, there's a fundamental other thing that's going on. And this is irrespective of which country we're in. There's something about how we are connected to our lives and each other. I was really impressed this morning. We heard from a charity that talks about love and connection, and it was all about love, about how we love each other and we receive that love back. The year before, 2 years ago, I was in Krasnodar talking to coal mining communities. And I met a guy who was 28 years old. He was a coal miner. And his second job was driving a taxi. And I said, I'm here to talk to people about health. And he said, oh, yeah, don't really want to talk to you. Oh, why? Well, you'll tell the company if I tell you anything about my health. So no, this is confidential. I won't say anything. Why do you feel nervous about telling the company? Oh, well, I'm 28 and I've got high blood pressure. And if I tell the company that, I'll end up with a desk job. I won't be able to work in the mine where I can earn a lot of money. No, that's a bit strange. Okay, but I accept that's how it is. I said, well, you say you don't want to tell the company. He said, well, I already know I've only got 2 years left of working in the coal mine on the high-paid jobs before I will get occupational disease. I will be ill by the time I'm 30. I said, surely not. That can't be so. Yes, because everybody does. If you're a man and you work down the coal mines, by the time you get to the age of 30, you have to have a desk job because you will get occupational disease. Now that's a real problem because there's a whole expectation in that community in Krasnodon that men, by the time they get to the age of 30, younger than most men in this audience, will already be ill. And he didn't feel he could do anything about it at all. So it's not just about the lifestyle and choosing not to smoke and choosing drink. There's something about the fatality, this fatalistic attitude that will happen anyway and I can't do anything about it. So there's a common problem that comes all the way through health issues, and it's who's got the power to change things? Have I got the power to change things? And my expectations, how far can I go? So irrespective of whether it's in the United Kingdom or if it's in the Ukraine, there's a big problem, and it's about our connectedness. So, next slide. We share, Ukraine and United Kingdom and other countries, 3 common problems. Our lives are being professionalised. So, what I mean by that is, that previous slide with the nice factors, the determinants of health, is really good, is true. All those different factors do affect us. But the problem is, I lose sight of, as a person walking around, I lose sight of what I can do. So when it comes to health, I don't quite know what to do about my health because doctors know about that. And I don't know quite how far I can go in education because teachers and professors know all about that. And when it comes to the environment, I don't quite know what to do with the environment to make sure that I have a less carbon footprint or things are more sustainable, because there's a professional elite out there that does that. In creating high knowledge with lots of professions, we've somehow taken that away from people. So our lives have been boxed off and professionalised, and common people feel that experts can change things and we can't. So this is something about losing the connections between each other. And the result of all this is that, rather like that coal miner in Krasnodon, we become too dependent. And as a consequence, we become too disempowered. Now, I feel quite embarrassed standing up here and talking about this morning because I've seen real empowerment in Kiev. We've heard about it all this morning about the Maidan. I saw it, sat there appalled, watching Espresso TV of what was happening on the Maidan. Appalled on one level and absolutely proud on another because people came together and changed things. And what's starting to happen throughout Europe now is that same mood is going across all types of public service. So I'm going to talk through social value and I'm going to talk about asset-based community development as 2 particular concepts that have started to get real traction, real energy in most countries. Next slide. And it comes back to a re-understanding of something that has been going on from the 1960s, really. Ecological thinking, ecological models. In the 1960s, people started to realise that how we lived on the earth wasn't sustainable anymore. The way that we work, the way that we live, was having a big impact on the environment. So we started to see a lot of development of ecological models. And the very basic ecological model says one thing, that whatever I do affects the environment, and the environment I live in affects me, in all sorts of different ways. Well, that's the basic dynamic model. From that model, next slide, there's a different set of thinking. So I'm going really conceptual here. But if you start at the far end, that basic model says, every time we make an action, irrespective of what it is, we need to think, what's the environmental consequence? So even today, this conference, how much carbon has been emitted because we've all got together? How much petrol was spent on getting us here? How much energy was dissipated in getting us here? And we should always, when we do something like this, think, was the benefit of us all coming together and talking all day, was that offset by the harm that we've done to the environment, and weighing it up? So this is the start of the cost-benefit equation. There's absolutely brilliant things going on here today, the connections that are being made between people, but it's come at a cost. We could have all been doing something else instead. We could have all been out planting trees instead of being here, for example. So that's the basic model over there. Every time we do something, we should think of the environmental consequence. The second model is more social than that, and is even more pertinent today. And it's every time we think of something that we're doing in the environment, we have to think about competition and equity. Because the balance isn't how do I relate to the environment, it's how do I relate to other people in relation to that environment. So, the people in this room, we have resources. We don't have as many resources as Yanukovych had, but we have resources. The fact that Yanukovych had a great big loaf of bread that was made of gold meant that people out here don't have other resources. A social ecological approach says we've always got to take account of all those dynamics. And a lot of these things we've been talking about today. There's a shift even further though. And this is when we start to talk about social value. I've mentioned a number of things already. I've talked briefly about education, environment, health. They're actually very similar. The problems that cause the issues around a bad environment, poor education, rising crime, health, the things underneath them, the things that drive the change, a lot of them are the same issues. And a lot of them are things like who has power, who doesn't, who has a voice, who doesn't, who has access to resources, who doesn't. All this third bit is meant to illustrate as a model is that all of these things are intertwined. And actually, the way that we've funded projects in the past has pushed them away. So we've all seen pots of money for European projects, and they've been a health project, or a crime project, or an inclusion project, or whatever, all different pots of money. What this model says is, enough. If the common causes of these things that are going wrong are all the same, shouldn't we have much more integrated projects? And then the fourth model, moving along again, is taking this system and putting it into a way of thinking, a much more ecological way of thinking and doing things. None of that's new. That sort of concept has been around for a long time. What's starting to happen in much of Europe, though, is it's beginning now to drive public policy. Next slide. So, a major step forward came in 2012 in the United Kingdom with something called the Social Value Act. I can't tell you how important this piece of legislation is. It is hugely important. What the government said was, from now on, when we let a contract, when we pay for money for a new project or a contract, from any point of government in the UK, we won't just assess the bids that come forward on can they do the job and how much does it cost. From now, we will take account of wider social value. And wider social value is just an extended way of thinking. And it says, resources are scarce. Throughout the world now, resources are scarce. So every time we spend €1, €1, £1, whatever that public money is being spent on, we shouldn't just get the project that we've asked to be delivered. We should ask for wider social value as well. So for every pound that we spend, for every greenery that we spend, we want to try and get as much value in the other areas as possible. So the example would be, if I am funding a health project, I don't just want the health project to deliver me health outcomes, I want environmental outcomes as well. I want crime reduction, I want cohesion, I want people to come together. I want as much as I can from that one project. The Americans call it getting more bang for the buck. Why this was important was, it's not just saying that anymore, it's actually enshrining it in legislation. And the biggest change has been in two things simultaneously. Businesses have finally had to take seriously corporate social responsibility. Before, the big people, Philips, Microsoft, they talked about it and did it, but not everybody did. Now, if you were going to get any public money in the UK, you've got to show corporate social responsibility. But similarly, the other shift that's happening is the philanthropic organisations, the charities, are better at doing it. So they're the ones that suddenly are on the rise. So right now, there's a massive shift in the United Kingdom from public services that used to be run by private companies that are now losing those contracts. And it's charities that are winning them. Not just a small scale, this is a huge scale. Social enterprises, third sector organisations, charities, philanthropic organisations, they're all better at delivering social value. There's a whole series of reasons why. One, they're closer to people themselves. But two, they don't start from a professional box. Usually social enterprises, charities, start from a more holistic level anyway. So it's easier for them to start thinking, if I'm doing this in health, can't I also deliver that in the environment? So this is the sort of thing that it looks like. Imagine a project, this one here. So X is the project, and I'll use a project I heard about this morning in this room. Imagine a project that's got young people cleaning up parks, going out there and cleaning up the environment, getting involved in litter collection, getting rid of graffiti and all of those things. Just by the way that project runs, I guarantee that by getting young people physically active, it's also giving health benefits. Just by getting young people together from different backgrounds, it'll be starting to break down differences between them. It will be giving you better social cohesion. By getting kids actively involved in something, instead of being bored on the streets, actually has an impact on crime prevention as well. And you get all that just from this one project that might have been an environment project. That sounds just good sense to me, the way things should have always been. But there's so many initiatives that have forgotten that, and they've just been an environment project or a health project. And all these other benefits have been just given away. What the Social Value Act is saying is, we want to collect that evidence, so when we actually give you your contract, we want to see those other things as well. Next one. So it's measuring it though is quite complex. Because if it's a health project, you've usually set up your metrics, your KPIs, your indicators are on some quite professional health bits. So you might be very clear about what you want from that. What's harder then is to then say, well, on top of those KPIs, we also want environment KPIs, education KPIs, crime KPIs. So it's a bit complex, but there's a whole series of tools that have now been developed, things like social return on investment, social value auditing methods, cost-benefit analysis, that try and track some of these wider social values as well. What I would say, because I've worked on the United Kingdom social value model, and I helped to create some of the metrics around it, is that what we must never lose sight of is the primary thing is the core benefit. It will always be what have you been paid to do. All that we are saying now is always collect that as your core evidence, but also try and collect evidence about your wider social value, your secondary benefits, because in the future, that's going to be really important. As I say, if you were going for a United Kingdom project now, you will have to collect these secondary values, these secondary benefits. My understanding is that for European Commission monies, that's also coming in. World Health Organization, it's also coming in. UNDP have similar systems. So wider social value and finding ways of counting wider social values is really coming, and everybody needs to get geared up for it. It's not that hard. It just requires you to think a little bit more out of the box and a bit more ecological. And the benefit is, charitable organisations are better at doing it because you're more in tune with the issues. The next slide. So, just to repeat, why is this important to philanthropy and developing charity-based community projects? Holistic thinking, innovation, you're closer to community needs, not professionally dominated, flexible and responsive. And all of those things now are really starting to matter to governments. And it's produced a different way of thinking. Okay, that was the first concept. I want to talk to you about the second concept. Next slide. This equally is getting lots of attention throughout Europe. I've, in the last 2 years, been doing work with the World Health Organization in Poland, in northeast Poland, around asset-based community development. I've done the same in Nairobi, in Africa, and I'm working in the United Kingdom on these things as well. And this is a really simple way of thinking. It might just be really familiar to you. You might just go, yeah, we've heard all of that. So, next slide. What's that? It's a glass. It has 50% air, 50% water, vodka. We'll go with vodka. So, 50% air, 50% vodka. Is it half full or is it half empty? So, hands up. Who says it's half full? Who says it's half empty? Okay, right. This is a really interesting concept. The way that professions have looked at problems in society so far, we've focused a lot on need. We look at the situation as if it's always half empty. So when we describe health issues, we look at what's wrong. We count illness, we don't count health. With environmental projects, we count what's wrong with the environment. We look at the graffiti, we look at litter on the streets, we look at dying trees. We don't look at, in either of those, the glass half full perspective. What is already there that we can build on? And it's a real problem for us. It's a real problem because we've got to start to shift this thinking. Because always looking at need helps to create that dependency that I talked about. If the professions, if the experts are always looking in a negative way at the way the world is and counting what's wrong, how do you start to find the answers? You started from the wrong place. I'll give you an example of this, just to try and show you what I mean by this. In Kętrzyn, a small rural community, northeast Poland, there's a social services department there, and its need is getting huge. A lot of the people that used to work and live there have gone, because Poland's economy was in a bit of a mess. So these people have gone, and they've gone to Ireland, they've gone to England, they've gone to Germany, they've gone to France. All the people who had abilities left. And Kętrzyn itself is a bit of a give-up place. People are giving up. The result is you've got a social care director up there, you've got a social services department in the town hall that constantly has queues of people coming in. And the system is built on a needs basis. So if you turn up and you say, I've got this need, I've got problems with alcohol, I can't get a job, my mobility is bad, I can only walk on crutches, do I fit the criteria? Social worker looks down the pad of paper, ticks a number of boxes, yes, you've got the points, you hit the criteria, here's a handout, here's some money, we can help you live. And that person then goes away. That's great when you've got enough resources to go around, but when the majority of your community are hitting those criteria, you've got a problem. So what we've been doing in Kętrzyn is turning this on its head. So instead of it being about needs, when people come forward for help and support, the first question is, can we sit down and talk about your life? What do you do? What are your talents? What are you interested in? Tell me about your neighbourhood. Tell me about your family. Okay. What help and support were you expecting coming here today? What can you give? And suddenly, there's a different dialogue, because everybody has something to give. Everybody. Everyone has a talent. And in receipt of the support that they could get by hitting the criteria, now in Kensington, there's got to be a deal done. The person who's in receipt of the benefits has to now give something back, somehow, somewhere. Not to the social services department, not to the town hall, but just somewhere else in the community. So the sorts of things that have come out of this have been young people who've been addicted to alcohol or drugs that are going off and doing a bit of gardening in somebody's allotment and helping to grow food. Somebody that's an artist is actually going helping old people and teaching art. They're still receiving some benefit from social services, but they're paying it forward. There's a deal. And this is all about asset-based community development. And the central thing is just a really simple trick. Regarding everything as half full. You start from what is there to build on and start to build on it. And it's never a dependency. It's always about trying to build in independence and connection to each other. Giving so that you can get. Getting so that you can give. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. Dead simple. There's a whole series of tools that lie behind this. I'm not here just to talk about some random concepts. What lies behind social value and asset-based community development are a whole series of new tools. They're fairly easy to use, but just a little bit different. Next slide.
Oh, yeah.
So this is really quite complex, and it's a basic tool to start asset mapping. So what we started to see in many countries now is that charities are starting to flip their needs and asset-based thing on its head. And they're going out to communities and starting to map communities in a new way. So they're going out to talk to people in the community and say, what's great about living here? Whereas in the past they went out and went, oh, that's a bad environment, or oh, look at those kids that are causing a lot of nuisance, or look at that problem there, or that problem there. Now they're going out and saying, no, let's go with what have we got to build on? And they start to map out talents and skills of people, the different connections between people, things like where do people get together? Is it on the market on a Saturday morning when you're buying fruit and vegetables? Is that a place where people actually smile at each other? The church, is that dying, or are people really still into their faith? And they start to map these things out. They do put into this map things like where are the schools and where's the health centre and which workplaces. They're all part of this as well. But they're just one part of this big asset map that's built up. When they've got that, they've got a plan to start working from. Not from where do we go to start fixing things, but where do we go where we can drop in a seed of an idea and it will germinate on its own and people will take ownership and develop their own projects. So asset-based community development, there are some tools that will help you to start to do this. Next slide. These are just examples of some of the plans, how you start to build this sort of work up. But I don't want you to go away with it's just a technical exercise. It's the thing underneath this that's really important. It's the conversation you have with people, which is, do you want to make a change? Great. What do you want to make a change to? Okay. What can you offer? What can we offer you? And constantly it's about, how can we get together and do something differently? It's all about innovation. It's all about change. But it's a simple concept that every time you get something, you've got to give something back. It doesn't have to be the same thing. It doesn't even need to be the same magnitude. But just everybody's got to take part. Everybody's got to be active. Next slide. Asset maps don't need to be technical. This is flip chart paper stuff. This is people getting a bit of fun out of getting a marker pen and drawing their community, drawing the connections. And the conversation is just as important as what comes out at the other end of it. But what comes out is a very good rich picture, something like that. That in the past, if you'd have put one of those into a project application for funding, it'd have been a bit, yeah, what's that about? Now, because of social value, this stuff starts to make sense. So, next slide. None of this is new. None of it. What it's about is getting back to the way that we used to live anyway. Going back, decades ago. We used to work and live in small communities, close to the impact of our decisions. We used to live in small communities that were together, and we could see it. All that's happened over the last few decades is the impact of the decisions we make are sometimes lost and too far away from where we can see them. This just brings it all back into something that's a little bit closer. We've done brilliantly in developing professions. We've got some very highly skilled people in different walks of life. I teach a master's degree in public health, but yet I know nothing about my own health. It's just bizarre. We professionalise things so much. This is not getting rid of professions. We need professions. What this is saying is we all know a little bit about our own lives, don't we? And actually, that's what really matters. And all that really matters is getting those connections between people and us to facilitate those connections and facilitate those conversations. So in summary, it's all about co-production. And if this works, it produces a win, 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 win. It's a win for health. It's a win for environment. It's a win for people and feeling empowered. And it's a win because we just give each other a lot of love. Thank you. Questions?
Давайте 5 минут на вопросы-ответы, если есть вопросы. Или все сложно, или все легко. Есть один вопрос. Можно микрофон, пожалуйста, чтобы был перевод?
Where can we have know more about social value and social capital investment? We want to know more about it.
If you want to know more about social value and social value investments and the tools, it will be very easy for me to create a reading list and get them sent through whichever medium that you want them to be. So there's lots of materials, there's lots of plans and blueprints. The ones that I know are the ones written in the English language, because unfortunately that's all I can read. I can talk to Anya about finding a way of getting some of those translated into local languages, and we can either set up something like a Facebook page where we'd have them on. None of this needs to be hard. We can quickly get them. I've got them at my disposal. That's easy. Getting them into the local area and then translated is maybe trickier. It just needs some resource, but we can easily do that.
My name is Irina Zamrueva, Government Relations Coordinator of the National Ecological Project Let's Do It Ukraine. Thank you for a wonderful lecture, first of all. And I would like to ask you from a perspective of, I think we would all agree that our country is on the stage where we're a developing society. The values are still forming at that stage where we could help people to grow with the right values actually. So what would be your suggestion for non-governmental organizations, civic society organization, how to framework the aspects of sustainable development in practical implementation in working with the community directly?
I actually think the start of it is the thing that I talked about last, which is the asset-based community mapping. Often these concepts can frighten people off. And anything to do with ecology is like, I've got a degree in ecology, I still don't understand it. It's really difficult to get your head around some of it. But the simple stuff is, just get people together to talk about their community and their neighbourhood, and the things that they like about it and the things that they don't like about it, and think innovatively about the solutions. A lot of the social values will come out of it. It's about how to have that conversation. Just doing creative things with crayons and pens and flip chart pads gives you the start of the conversation. The trick comes in that the people who facilitate it do need to understand the connection between the health project, the environment project, and all of that. So a good strong facilitator and some useful little techniques in how do you draw the maps, that I think is the start. This doesn't need to be complex. And I say the other thing is just to hang on to the simple principles as well. This is about building on what's there, not trying to reinvent something from elsewhere, and not going elsewhere to look for the examples either, because it's always going to be grown from locally, because that's the context that matters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Спасибо. Я думаю, мы должны поблагодарить Эндрю, да? Эндрю сделал нам такое вступление от нашей утренней части, где мы говорили о концепциях, стратегиях, видении, более практической части, к переходам. И сейчас у нас начинается следующая часть конференции, это Камора благодійності, 4 секции, где мы будем рассматривать практические инструменты, оценки потребностей для развития громад, групп стейкхолдеров для развития проектов, оценки эффективности, кому это интересно, Эндрю здесь будет об этом говорить. Мы будем говорить с Митей Олешковским о опыте